Hi everyone, welcome to my channel at JohnTeacher and welcome to this tutorial on creating a simple CRUD API using Flask. Today I'm going to guide you through building a basic API that can create, read, update and delete items. This tutorial is perfect for beginners and who are just getting started with using Flask. Today on this tutorial we are going to cover setting up our environment, creating the Flask application, defining a simple data model, implementing a CRUD operation, and testing our APIs using Postman. So the source code for this tutorial is going to be available on GitHub, and you can find the link on the description below. So without any further ado, let's get started with.
So the first thing we want to do right now is to create a folder for our project using the mkdir command. So we just created a folder called Flask and we'll cd into that project folder. Then we'll create our virtual environment for our project using the command python-m virtual environment, and then we'll specify a virtual environment. So the next thing we need to do is to activate this virtual environment using the command above. After activating this command, we'll create a folder. Let's create a file first called app.py, and then we're going to open up our project on Visual Studio Code. So after doing that, the first thing we want to do right now is to pip install Flask. So we are going to be installing Flask because we are working with Flask on this project. So we are going to be installing it using the command pip install Flask. So after installing Flask, we import Flask from Flask and other dependencies that we need for other modules we need for our project. So we are going to be importing Flask as well as the request module and the JSONify module. So the request module is used to actually make HTTP requests. The JSONify module is used to serialize our data. So after we have our data, we can serialize our data using the JSONify. So right now we need to initialize our app. So as you can see, we initialize our app using the app equals to Flask __ name. And then we are going to specify that if the name of this module is equals to is the main module, then we'll run our application using the app.run, and then we'll specify the debug to be true, so that when we are actually running our program, we can be able to see any errors clearly that we're going to encounter. So then we'll define a data store. So we are going to be creating an empty list called items. So this is where all the items we are going to be creating today is going to be stored in. And then the first thing we want to do is to create our first API route, which is the home route. So we are going to be using the command app.route to create that. And then we'll define a function that is going to hold this route. And this function will return just a welcome message. Welcome to this Flask CRUD API. So return welcome to the Flask CRUD API, because that's what we are doing today. I think that's that for a start. So I'm going to be running our file right now. So I'll run it. You can see that our project is running on port 5000. So I'll copy the URL to this project and I'll head over to Postman. So when I paste it and I run it, you see that we have a welcome to this Flask API CRUD, meaning that our project is running up and running successfully. So with this, we can go ahead to now create our different routes to perform the different CRUD operations, which is the create, read, delete, and update. So the first thing we want to do right now is to create the item route. So this route is going to create items. So this is the route that we are going to be using to create different items we are going to be storing on the empty list we created above, the items list we created above. So this route just takes in a part items, and then the method is definitely a post method because we are posting. So in CRUD operations, we have read, update, delete, and create. So the create method is a post method. So let's create a function called create item. So all this function does is that this function is going to take in, receive an item, and then append that item to our items list we created above. So we'll just create a variable called item, and then we use the request.getJSON method. So the request.getJSON method is used to receive HTTP methods from the user. So after receiving that, we are going to append that new item we received from the user. We are going to append it into our item list, as you can see above. And then we return a JSONify. So the JSONify is to make sure that the JSONify method helps us to convert our Python dictionaries back to JSON. So, and then we return the status code 201. I think that is done for the create item. So the next thing we want to do is to have a different route that will get all the items from our user. So this is a read operation. As you can see, we had the route to get all the items, another to get a single item by index. So this particular route gets all the items. So this route, as you can see, is a get request because we are getting all the items we are going to be that are going to be stored on our items list above. So all this method does is it just returns all the items we have above on our list, the item list we just created above. So the next thing we are doing is to now create another route that will get a single item by the index. So this route is supposed to get just a single item. Let's say we have 4 different items in our list. This particular route is supposed to get just one single item. The get all item route was able to get all the routes we have. So, but the get single item route is supposed to get just one single item. So when we specify the index of that item, this route is going to return just that particular item. So this route has a URL which is the items, and then it takes in an integer. So we take in an integer, and definitely it's still a get method because we are getting items. So we know that in Python or in any programming language, we start counting from the zero index. So for us to be able to specify the exact index, because the user creating a user starts from index one, and then for our list, we know that our list starts counting from index zero. So we have to, on line 32, we have to subtract whatever index the user gives us by one to get the actual index. And then we'll now give it is an if statement to say that if that index is less than zero, or the index is greater than the length of our items on the list, then we should return an error message, item not found. But if that item is found with an error code message 44, but if that item is found, then we should return that item at that index. So the items we have, the items dictionary we have list we have at the top, we should return that item on the particular index the user is going to provide to us. So that's what this get a single item route does. So after this, we are now going to create a new route. That's the update. So the update route uses the put CRUD method. So we are going to be updating a single item on our list. So we're going to be updating our items, right, on our list rather. So this route takes in our route, the items, and then the index to which we want to update. So maybe if we have 4 files on our list and we want to update the file at index 1, we can always do that by specifying the index. So the method for this operation is the put method. So we're going to be creating a function. I'll call it update item that takes in an index and updates the item at that index. So definitely do the same thing we did. So we are going to minus the index by 1 so we can be able to get the actual index which the user is going to provide. And then we'll check to say that if that index is less than 0, it means the item is not found. Or if that index is greater than the length of the items. So the length of the items, if it's greater than the length of the item, it means it is not found. And then after that, we can return an error message if any of that condition is not met. You return an error message, item not found, with an error code 404, meaning not found. Item not found. But if our condition is met, then we know that we are returning that particular item at that particular index. So we return, okay, I think we first of all get the updated item, which is a request.get to get the updated item. So the updated item variable takes in the request.json. So it takes in the request from the user and then updates that user based on the index. So if the user specifies, let's say for example, index 4, it takes that item at that index 4 and updates it with whatever incoming requests coming in from the user at the updated item variable, and then we can then return that updated item. So this updates our item list with the new request from the user. And finally, we are going to be performing a delete operation. So this deletes an item. It takes in an index and then the method, which is delete. So when we specify the index at which of the item we want to delete on the list, what this operation does is that it goes, takes in that particular index we specified and deletes that item from our list. So this takes in a method delete. Takes in the index, function takes in an index, and then definitely we are going to subtract our index from 1 to make sure that our index level is accurate, and then we're going to check to say if that index is less than 0 or the index is greater than the length of the items on our list, then we should return an error message, item not found, with a status code 404. So return JSONify with our error, which says item not found. So now we are going to perform the delete operation. We'll create a variable deleted item. So all this variable is going to be doing is going to be using the pop method. So we have a method called pop in Python list. So what the pop method does is that you specify that particular item, that particular index you want in the list to be popped, and it will pop it out, delete it from the list. So after doing that, we can now return back our deleted item. Deleted item. So right now we are running our server, and we'll head back to Postman to test. So first of all, let's test to see that our project is working. Our server is running correctly. As you can see, we have the welcome. And then the first thing we want to do is to test the items route. So this is the route that gets all the items. So we'll try to create an item. We'll give it an ID, 1, and then we'll give that item a name. So it can be anything. It's just a dummy data. So for here, I'm going to call this item mango. So let's test. Let's make sure that it's a post request. It's not a get request because we are creating an item. So you can see at the response down below that we have an item already created. So now we'll test our next route, which is the get all items. So we'll run it, see the get request. You see that we have our item with the ID and name showing us below. It's the same thing we just created. So I'm going to be creating different, I'm going to be adding more items. So you can see that when we run our get all items route, you see that we have all the items we just created. So I'll call this orange and I'll create that. So if I test, you see I have orange as part of our items created. So I'm going to creating 2 more items. Let's call this grape. And then finally, I'm going to be creating watermelon. Test that. Yeah, so let's now get back to our get request and see what we have. So you can see that we are able to retrieve all our methods. So the next thing we want to do is to create to try to get a single method. So by specifying the index, you can see that we specified index 1 on the address. You can see that from our get request, index 1 is mango. You see from the results response we got, you see that 1 is mango. So let me test at index 4 to see what if we're going to be getting watermelon. So index 4, let's run that. See that we have watermelon. Means our API is working as expected and correctly. So at index 3, you can see we are having grape. So we are going to try to update an item. So we'll specify the index to which we want to update the item and then update the item. So at index 1, let's update the item, and let's not forget to change the method to which we are updating our item to a put, because it's a put operation. That's the method we specified for updating. So we are going to be giving out our JSON data that's going to take in the ID of the data we are going to be updating. So we are going to be updating the data at ID 1 on the list. So, and then we'll update the name. We'll change, I think at 1 we had mango, right? We had mango at index 1. So we are going to be changing that to pawpaw. So let's run this and see what we have. So let's run this. As you can see, our index 1 has been changed to pawpaw. It means our update route is working correctly. We have pawpaw. So let's try something else. Let's try at index 4. Limes. We have limes at index 4. Now let's try to create a delete operation. So I think we had a duplicate. Let's specify the deletes. We're going to delete at index 1 first. So after deleting index 1, I'm going to delete the duplicate. So we have like two different duplicates at index 4. So I'm going to be deleting index 1 first. But let's test that to see if our API is working correctly. So I'm going to run this. You see that we don't have index 1 again. We don't have index 1 again. So we have two different index 4, which I'm going to be deleting. I'll delete both of them. So we have index 1, which was changed to purple. So far so good. You can see that our built-in CRUD API using Flask is working, and we've tested all our endpoints. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe.